Welcome to KidMissing TV. This is our 5th installment. This time, we will be talking about cases of children who went missing in pairs or groups. Now, this may sound like a rare phenomenon, but actually, if you do some research, it's not. These are just the tip of the iceberg, and some that I found particularly fascinating. So let's get started. The first case takes us all the way back to October 21st, 1954 in Verdun, Quebec, Canada. 2 little boys, Clifford Sherwood and George Grumblay, disappeared on their way to school. Clifford was 9 and George was 12. The original suspect was Clifford's father, Tex Sherwood, as was spoken about in a segment on Unsolved Mysteries about the case, but they merely glossed over George. I've had the privilege of speaking to 2 members of George's family who would like to get to the bottom of it. The problem is half the family does, and half the family wants to bury it. So, but as long as somebody's interested, I'm interested, you know? Again, the case is so old that the police aren't even really looking into it too much, so there won't be a phone number for this one at the end of the show. The problem with Tex being the kidnapper, there are a couple of problems with that. First of all, his daughters lived with him off and on through most of that period, so wouldn't they have seen their brothers? The only evidence was a picture where Clifford looked a little bit older to his family than last time they had seen him. I wasn't sure about that, and I don't actually have the picture. I don't have any pictures from this case, unfortunately. Oh, pardon me, I do have a picture of Clifford to show you, but I don't have a picture of George. So that was really the only evidence. And the Tex apparently used a different name when he went in the military, so his daughters couldn't get his records. I was a little goofy about that, but I don't see where that has anything to, that can be easily explained. I don't see where that has anything to do with the kidnappings. And also what happened to George, if Clifford's father took Clifford. There was a torso of a young boy found not long after the 2 boys disappeared. Mrs. Sherwood refused to go and see it. And I don't know whether George's family ever went and looked at it or if this unfortunate child was ever identified. But neither boy has ever been found. There was a man who used Clifford's name who went into the military. He also was stopped in a routine traffic stop. But instead of being Clifford Sherwood, he used Clifford's middle name and used Clifford as a middle name. He reversed it. Whether this was a coincidence or whether this was Clifford, nobody's really sure. If you want to learn more about this case, you can go to the Unsolved Mysteries Wikia, or you can go to the Sitcoms online message boards and look for the Unsolved Mysteries board. They're a great group of people, and I highly recommend their board. You can also find, by the way, other cases that we've spoken about on this show, like Antoinette Cayadito. You can find information about her case there as well. The next case that we're going to speak about is a case from Fairfax, Ohio. 2 9-year-old little boys, Jimmy McQueary and Johnny Hundley, disappeared playing in their Fairfax, Ohio village, just being boys, walking around. They went to Frisch's Mainliner. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but that's where they went. And at first it was said maybe they drowned, maybe they ran away. And people thought initially that the boys fell into the river and drowned. Then they thought that the boys had run away. Highly unlikely they were 9. They would have come home that night when they got hungry for dinner. It was decided that they must have been abducted. These boys are still missing. One of their sisters, Dania Wilson, is still searching. She still goes to the area near where the boys were last seen, try to figure out exactly where they disappeared from. And she has a picture that she holds dear of Jimmy at his last Christmas with his family. He loved cowboys, and the police chief believes the answer is right there in town. It starts there and ends there. And he's probably right. I can't give you a phone number for this case either, but I can tell you to go to Justice Quest forums and you will see more about this case. And also, after 44 years, the FBI has joined the case, so you can call the FBI in Ohio as well if you have any information. Next case, the next two cases actually, are both pairs of sisters. Cynthia and Jackie Leslie, age 15 and 13, disappeared July 31st, 1974, from Mesa, Arizona. The girl's father was dying of cancer, and they moved to Mesa to be closer to the hospital where he was undergoing chemotherapy. The girls told their mother they were scheduled to babysit and began walking down the road. When they didn't come home by the time that they should have, their mother discovered that they didn't have a babysitting job that evening. They actually went to a teenage party. That's not so unusual. Teens did that then, teens do that now. Tell their parents one thing and do something else. That was never my style. Some teens say were at the party, some teens say they weren't, and they keep changing their stories with authorities. Their father passed away, never knowing what happened to them, although I'm sure now in heaven he does. There is a Facebook page, Missing Cynthia and Jackie Leslie, for the two girls that I actually just found. And their mother, before I get to my quote, one of the possible suspects in this case was infamous, notorious serial killer Ted Bundy. Not buying it. As far as I know, Ted Bundy was never in Arizona. The mother, in a quote from the East Valley Tribune, said, "I've tried to keep the story of their disappearance alive so nobody forgets about it. I think there is someone out there who knows what happened to them and never came forward. Emma Prue." And I will give you the phone number to get in contact with authorities if you have information in regards to this case at the end of the program. This next case is another pair of sisters who disappeared in a similar time frame. They disappeared March 25th, 1975. And they have somewhat of a timeline. Their names are Kathrine and Sheila Lyon. Lyon. Kathrine was 10 and Sheila was 12. The girls left their home around between 11 a.m. and noon on that day to go to strip mall in their hometown of Wheaton, Maryland, and they were seen about 1 p.m. outside the Orange Bowl Pizzeria in the strip mall, talking to an unidentified man who later got the moniker Tape Recorder Man, because this man had a briefcase with a tape recorder in it. This was an old-fashioned tape recorder. If you're old enough, you might know what I'm talking about. They have reel-to-reels, little reels that the tape rolls from one reel onto the other reel, just like a movie projector type thing, only it's an audio recorder. And that's the kind of recorder that was described that the man had, which kind of makes sense in 1975 because there were a lot of those still around then. The girls were seen walking one of the most direct routes back from the mall toward their home between 2:30 and 3 p.m. Now, this man would have had to waited an hour and a half to do something. and waited until they were walking home. I don't think tape recorder man's the abductor. Little strange maybe, but not the abductor. Their mother set a 4 p.m. curfew. They did not arrive. By 7 p.m. she was in a panic and called police. On April 7th, about 2 weeks later, a woman in Manassas, Virginia, said that she saw a car with Maryland plates, with the plate bent up so you couldn't see all of the numbers, with 2 girls bound in the back of it that looked like Kathrine and Sheila. Nothing ever came of the lead. It's possible she really saw Kathrine and Sheila. Don't know. Virginia's not that far from Maryland. But police were never able to get anywhere. The plate numbers were DMT-6, and again, the other 2 numbers were obscured due to the bending of the plate. A small army of citizens band radio operators got together and started communicating about the vehicle and about the case. After that sighting, they didn't garner any new leads, but there has been a major break in the case as of February of this year. Yay! I mean, after 39 years, police have named a person of interest, as I said. His name is Lloyd Welch, also known as Michael Welch. He is a registered sex offender. He used to set up carnivals in malls during that time in that area and molested girls. So he is now the number 1 person of interest in this case. You can call 1-800-THE-LOST if you have any information on this case or any of the cases, and I'll give you other numbers later. I don't have one on this case, unfortunately. The next case, I'm actually going to play you a couple of clips from my radio show because excuse me, I actually had the brother of one of these 3 girls on my radio show. If you could see the number of pages I have, you'd think I'd be talking about this for half an hour, but actually I won't go through every detail I have in my notes. I will tell you that on December 23rd, 1974, Rachel Arnold Trilca, 17, Renee Wilson, 14, and Julianne Moseley, 9, went on a Christmas shopping trip to the mall in Fort Worth, Texas. Their vehicle was found in the parking lot with their purchases in their vehicle. Their packages, their presents were already in the vehicle. The girls were nowhere to be found. One witness said they thought they saw them in a security van in the mall parking lot. Somebody else said they saw them getting herded into a truck in the mall parking lot. These young ladies have become known as the Fort Worth Trio. In fact, if you go to missingtrio.com, that's the brothers' website. His name is Rusty Arnold. Rachel was married at the time, though she was only 17. And Rusty was only 11 at the time that his sister disappeared. There was a letter sent to her husband, actually placed in his mailbox the next day. And it was addressed so formally, Thomas A. Trilca, instead of Tommy, which is how she would have addressed him. And Rachel was scrawled in the upper left of the envelope, and the handwriting was described as being childish in the note. Nobody believes that Rachel wrote it. In fact, the family believes Rachel's older sister Donna may have written the note. What I'd like to do is take this moment for Rusty to tell you what he remembers that day.
Me and my mother went up to the mall. I think we found the car at the mall about 4 o'clock. We went to every store in the mall until 11 o'clock that night, having them paged at every store. My father and Renee's dad and a neighbor of ours set up at the Firestone store right up above the parking lot with shotguns waiting on somebody to come back to the car. And nobody ever did. So the next day they just let the car go to Tommy, who was Rachel's husband. And that's about what I remember happened on that day.
And actually, Rusty's website is where you can go if you have any leads on that case, because he has all of the information there, and he's tracking all the leads. The note said, if I can find the quote in my hundreds of notes here, I don't want to make too much noise, so I'll tell you basically it said, we're going to catch it. Just in turn of phrase, but we just needed to go away. And we're going down to Austin. We'll be back by next Friday. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because they had a 9-year-old child with them. You wouldn't take a 9-year-old child if you were planning on running off. Or if you were planning on doing anything, no, because a 9-year-old child's going to tell on you. And a 9-year-old child's going to be tired and cranky at some point if you take them off for a long period of time. So, I don't know. Chris, there's been a lot of questions of why would they take a 9-year-old child with them at all, even just on the trip to the mall. I can't answer that. I don't know what the relationship was, with the families and stuff. Interestingly, the private investigator that was hired by the family, his name was John Swaim, he actually died in what police believe was a suicide. In 1979. He had been hired in 75. And before they hired the detective, and one of the reasons that they hired him, I guess, was because skeletal remains had been found way down in San Antonio of a young girl. And it had originally been thought she may be one of the 3 girls. She wasn't. I believe she remains unidentified. Rachel's mother actually kept all the articles in a scrapbook that were written about this case, and I actually happen to have all those articles that she kept, copies of them, that Rusty sent me, and it's in one of those envelopes that's this size, bulk rate envelopes, and stuffed. There was a lot of press in Texas at the time. That's why there's so many notes, but there's just no way to get through them all. That day that they disappeared left an indelible mark on Rusty, who again was only 11 at the time. And the sister was 19 at the time. She said, and I quote, "I've made a lot of bad choices in my life," she admits with a sigh. She talks easily about life filled with hurts and unhappy childhood, failed marriages, a brief stay in a detox center, but none is more painful than the wounds left by her sister's disappearance. She actually was in a relationship with Tommy before Tommy married her sister. That probably went over big. Following their disappearances, one interesting thing happened. That was that it was believed that Rachel was the only one alive, and that she had that under there come back every Christmas to the Fort Worth area. I'm not sure whether or not I think that's true. I just want to tell you a little bit about the other 2 girls. Julianne Moseley's mom basically almost had a nervous breakdown. She was in and out of the hospital trying to deal with losing Julie wherever she is. And Lisa Wilson's parents, Renee Wilson's parents, I'm sorry, actually live in the same house that they did then. Let me explain why I just called her Lisa. Because actually, Renee Wilson and Lisa Wilson are both my cousins' names. So that's why I got it mixed up. I apologize there. The next case that I'm going to talk to you about is two African American children, Michael and Pamela Mayfield. Michael was 7 and Pamela was 6. Pamela was starting kindergarten. Michael was in his second year of kindergarten. They held him back. They walked to their school, and they were walking back to their family's residence at the end of the day from Betsy Ross Elementary School in Houston, Texas. And on January 10th, 1985. In May of that year, someone came forward and said, they're not missing. They're living with their grandmother in, L.A. They were living with their grandmother in Houston. But, and the family said, well, we have family in L.A., but neither of their grandmothers are in L.A. So this was proven not to be true. Interestingly, there is a suspect in this case. Let's see. And it's the same suspect as in the Jonathan Foster case from 2010. A woman by the name of Mona Nelson, who at the time of this case in 1985 was herself already a convicted criminal and who lived with a pedophile right near where these children were. She's being investigated as a prime suspect because they believe that she was a serial killer. And police believe that whoever took them was known to them in some way, which makes sense. If you're in the middle of a Houston street, and this was apparently the East Tex freeway, ooh, just the thought of that, so young, then somebody's going to notice two kids kicking and screaming. Not only that, how do you hold on to two kids? So I'm thinking they probably did know their abductor. And if it was Mona Nelson, was she known to the family? We don't know, because police tend to keep their investigation close to the vest because they don't want to release something that maybe only the killer knows or, blow a case potentially. So I certainly respect that, and I will be giving you the phone numbers at the end of the program. The next case are another pair of African American children. They are not siblings. Kreneice Jones and Lemoyne Allen. Kreneice was 4 and Lemoyne was 2 when they disappeared from Woodville, Mississippi on May 10th, 1992. They had gone to a Mother's Day church service and dinner in Woodville. They didn't live there. And the families had traveled together. So at some point they stopped at a convenience store, and I guess the kids were running around, working off their energy from sitting in church and being good little kids for the day. And the adults must have been chit-chatting, and kids, being 2 and 4 years old, are very quick. They can get around that corner before you even know they're gone. So I cannot blame anybody for not having their eyes on those kids. And that is apparently what happened, and someone must have gotten a hold of them when they wandered. Because I bet you anything they wandered. And I believe that the potential is there that they're still alive, that they were raised, and they have absolutely no idea. Again, both children were African American. They were actually the same height and almost the same weight at the time. Lemoyne had a scar on his left knee, and Kreneice had a scar in front of her right ear. The FBI joined in the search because of the age of the children, and when they used bloodhounds, the children's scent was lost at the road. They led investigators to a road, and the children's scent was lost. That says they were picked up and put in a vehicle. The FBI received tips about an unknown blue car with chrome wheels and a black convertible hood in the area the day the children went missing. The car described was never found. Many years later, a woman contacted Joan's mother and indicated she was raising her daughter. The FBI followed up on the tip and discovered the woman's allegations were false. Why would you do that to a mother? Today, Jones would be 24, Alan would be 23. The families believe that they could still be alive and have no idea who they were. And I will give you the phone number at the end of the program. That's the song I keep singing. What I'd like to do next is last show I mentioned to you about the Amber Alert system and how different states have different names for their own Amber Alerts, depending on, a missing child that they honor with the name. And I want to tell you a little bit more about each of those children. Amber Hagerman, of course, was a 9-year-old little girl abducted and murdered in Arlington, Texas in 1996. Her case is still unsolved. In Georgia, it's called Levi's Call. Levi Freddy was an 11-year-old boy who was abducted on October 22nd, 1997 in Forsyth County, Georgia. His body was found the next day in the Dawson Forest Wildlife Management Area, and his killer has never been caught. If you have information, please call the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I do not have their phone number. I can tell you that there were 2 witnesses that police and the GBI would love to speak to, and I can give you their descriptions. The first witness was walking along the road, Little Mill Road, the road he was abducted from, about 6:30 that night, about the time he was abducted. A GBI forensic artist drew pictures of both witnesses apparently, but I've not been able to locate them, so you won't see them. The first one is described as a male in his late 50s with a scruffy gray beard. He was wearing a faded blue baseball cap, and he walked stooped over. The second witness was seen in the Dawson Forest Wildlife Management Area at around the time that the body would have been dumped. He was between 6 foot and 6'1", clean shaven, 45 to 55 years of age. And he was driving a 1980 to 1985 medium blue Toyota 2-wheel drive pickup with a white camper shell over the bed of the vehicle. In Arkansas, it's called the Morgan Nick Amber Alert. Morgan Nick was a 6-year-old little girl who was abducted on June 9th, 1995, about 10:45 p.m. during a Little League baseball game catching lightning bugs. She stopped to dump sand from her shoes. Her case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. And I have a phone number for that case, which I will give you. Guess when? Witnesses observed the man watching her playing with the other children. And a red Ford pickup truck with a white camper had disappeared about the same time as Morgan. The camper is possibly damaged at the right rear and was described as 4 or 5 inches too short for the truck, which had a short wheelbase and paint dulled by age. The truck is believed to have Arkansas plates. The Alma Police Department is investigating Alma, Arkansas. In Hawaii, it is called the Malley Alert for Malley L. Gilbert, age 6, who was abducted from her home in Kailua, Hawaii, during a family party on August 25th, 1985. She was abducted by an acquaintance of her father's. With friends like that, who needs enemies? He choked, drowned, Raped, sodomized, choked, and drowned the poor child. Her body was found the next day in a shallow grave along the shoreline between Molokai and Tana Point on the northwest corner of Oahu. James Lonsberry from Kaawea, an acquaintance of her father, was convicted. And the last one of these alerts I want to talk about is the Silver Alert. This is a newer thing. The Silver Alert was originally created for the elderly, especially people with dementia, Alzheimer's disease, to help quickly get the word out if they've wandered away. And it's also used for people who are disabled in some way, who may suffer from mental illness, people who, like I said, may be intellectually disabled or physically disabled, deaf, blind, or a child that doesn't fit the criteria of an Amber Alert, because the criteria of an Amber Alert is very specific. There has to be a witness. The next thing I want to do is talk to you about a case right here in Massachusetts. It's kind of an alert I'm giving you. A little boy named Jeremiah Oliver is missing from Fitchburg. He went missing in September 2013, but it wasn't known that he was missing until December, when his sister bravely told her teacher that she, her brother, her other brother, and her mother had been being abused. The older brother abused so badly that he lost part of his finger. The stepfather was miserable. Actually, he wasn't even stepfather, his mom's boyfriend. Finally, the children were removed from the home, the older boy and the sister. Nobody knew where Jeremiah was. And I don't think mom and her boyfriend are talking. 3 social workers have been fired. Thank you, Governor Patrick. He was livid because they botched this so badly and put these children so much at risk by their actions, including going to the home, knocking on the door, hearing people inside the home, and when nobody answered the door, they left. Now we have a missing, potentially deceased little girl was 8. 6-year-old child. I'm glad he fired them. The very last thing I want to do is give you an update. Last month, we talked about the cases of missing minority children, and there has been an update in the case of Asha Dash. If you'll recall, she was missing from, well, you know what? Let's just show you what I said about her last month. This next little girl, also African American, has a special place in my heart. I've been following her case almost since day one. Her name is Asha Dash, or Asha Jaquilla Dash. Asha disappeared on February 14th, 2000. She was 9 years old, from Shelby, North Carolina. She disappeared in the middle of the night. She was seen at 4 a.m. walking down the side of a busy highway, and nobody stopped. That just blows my mind, and the mind of every other adult that I've ever spoken to in regards to this case. Because it just makes no sense. And about 20 miles from her home, her book bag was found along North Carolina's Route 18, 5 miles south of a town called Morgantown. Asha's belongings were found in the bag. And they have been cleared to say that this case is still an ongoing investigation. Her parents have never given up hope that they will see their daughter again. Their names are Harold and Aquila Degree. Asha also has a little brother. Asha's website is http://hunt-for-asha-degree.blogspot.com. There is a group on the internet, and I'm not even going to give them the satisfaction of telling you the name of this group. They called Asha's very real story a hoax. It's been shown that this group is made up of registered sex offenders and drug abusers. When the group was vetted, this is what was learned of them. In 2012, a billboard was erected near Asha's home by the FBI to garner new leads in Asha's case. The FBI in Charlotte says this is still an active case and we still get new leads from time to time. Now, after years of investigation, Cleveland County, North Carolina authorities have a new lead to explore. A man from South Carolina was arrested in a 1990 case of a 7-year-old girl from Greensboro, North Carolina. And they believe he might also be connected to Asha's case. Donald Preston Ferguson, age 52, was arrested in the case of Shalonda S. Poole. She was found dead behind a Greensboro, North Carolina elementary school. Ferguson was living in Spartanburg and arrested in Spartanburg County. That's in South Carolina. He was charged with first-degree murder and first-degree sex offense of Poole, and is being held without bond in the Guilford County Detention Center in Greensboro, North Carolina. Could Ferguson have ties to Asha? It's another lead to explore in the case, said Cleveland County Sheriff Alan Norman. Between 1990 and today, he probably went through Cleveland County at one time, Norman said. It's another lead we will explore in the Miss Degree case. We will look to see where he was working 14 years ago. You know, I'm praying for her family that this is the answer that they seek. Now I'd like to give you those phone numbers I promised you. Going back to the beginning. First phone number I'd like to give you is the phone number for the Leslie sisters. If you know anything, call the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Maricopa County, Arizona, of course. 602-256-1087. 602-256-1087. It's right there on your screen. And also 1-800-THE-LOST. For the Mayfield children, you can call the Missing Persons Clearinghouse, Texas Department of Public Safety. They have an address, but they also have a phone number, 512-424-5074. Or their helpline, 800-346-3243. Again, 800-346-3243. Or the Houston Police Department Missing Persons Unit, 1-713-222-3131. That's 1-713-222-3131. And if you have any information in the abduction of Morgan Nick, please call the Alma, Arkansas Police Department at 479-632-3333. That's 479-632-3333. For the missing trio, again, it's missingtrio.com. Thank you for once again watching the program. I always appreciate your feedback when I'm in the store or someplace and someone comes up to me. It makes me feel great. means these stories are getting out there, and I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for continuing to watch. God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend, if this happens to be the weekend, which it does for me. God bless you, and good night.